The last, but certainly not the least speaker today, Nikolaos Farantouris. Thank you. Who is from EUROGAS and the Chair of Legal Affairs.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I think it's appropriate to say a big thank you to the organizers for this wonderful event. Thank you very much for invitation and hospitality. It's a great opportunity to see people from the academia, but also from business, from ECHO, from Yugo Petrol, and from other important industries in the region, in our common region. I'm going to touch upon energy projects, and I will try to draw your attention on the major institutional and regulatory developments and realignments concerning EU law, so as to think together what will be the case for energy business in our countries in the region. And if one looks at the figures, you understand immediately how dependent Europe and our countries on energy regarding our sources, regarding our energy products. More than 60% of natural gas is imported from third countries, and more than 80% of oil is also imported from third countries, and an excessive need for energy consumption is happen in the coming years. Only in the energy sector and only in the natural gas industry there will be a great imbalance, supply-demand imbalancing gap by 2020 that will grow larger by 2025. And a big portion, a big percentage of this supply-demand imbalance comes from the growth in Southeastern Europe, in the Balkan region. So what are the options? The options are traditional suppliers, historical suppliers like Russia, like the countries in Northern Africa and the Middle East, but also very serious alternatives. That is the Southern Corridor and the sources of the Caspian Sea, and most recently the sources of Southeastern Mediterranean, the triangle of Israel, Greece, and Egypt through Greece, Cyprus, through Greece to the rest of the continent. This may provide another diversified source of energy to a thirsty and very dependent Europe. At this juncture, the European Community system and the European Commission and the European institutions, I understand that they pay a lot of attention on two main agendas, two main concerns: an economic concern, an economic agenda of supply and demand and of competitiveness, and a security agenda reflecting strategic dependence on trade in oil and gas. And at the Commission's mind, at the European institution minds, they believe that if member states, if the institution we speak with one voice, they will got a completely different weight in negotiation. And as a matter of fact, there is a very ambitious common external energy policy taking currently place in Brussels, whereas the European Commission wants to monitor all intergovernmental energy deals between EU member states and third countries, or deals that involve a member state of the European Union and a third country. And the Commission wants to be allowed to negotiate commercial energy deals on behalf of the EU in the long term. And of course, this is not something that gains unanimous support by the member states. Some member states are advocates of this policy. Some other are highly reluctant in giving the green line to the European Commission to negotiate on behalf of themselves intergovernmental agreements, and just imagine commercial agreements at the same time. Example is Poland. Poland has long advocated for such a policy, and during policy negotiations on the Yamal pipeline, which transports gas from Russia to Germany, the EU Commission got involved, got involved, and demanded third-party access, invoking the EU law. The EU Commission suggests that sometimes it should negotiate not alongside, but instead of member states where agreements have a large bearing on the EU energy policy of objectives. It was mentioned before by Antonis Emelidis, what a big cluster and what a movable feast of projects and pipelines and connectors and connections and networks and grids, and including LNG facilities, storage facilities, floating storage and regasification units are currently happening in our region. You can see here, all these projects are on the table. All these projects are going to be scrutinized very carefully by the European Commission services and are going to gain support or not, both legislative, institutional, regulatory, and or financial support. Let me conclude that all these new finds, all these new and proposed energy projects, infrastructure projects, can really accelerate movement towards more diversified trade flows, more intense competition, and lower price. The principal goal of the new common energy policy of the European Union is diversification. Diversification regarding domestic markets, but also diversification of sources and routes, with particular emphasis on the sources. Thank you very much.